All right, good morning or hello or good evening, everyone, wherever you're in the world. Today we have a very interesting conversation with one of my interpreters, friends. His name is Bryan Day. So, how are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm very happy to be here, Oni-san. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. No, thank you very much for joining this conversation. No, my English sometimes gets broken, so I'm sorry about that. Anyways, the background of having this conversation is because I think it was about 2 weeks ago that we had a Google Meet conversation with you and some other interpreters and friends, and we said, why don't we have this conversation live on YouTube? And that's why we're here, right?
Yeah, I think the both of us really love our jobs and we love
Yeah.
language learning. And so every time we get together, we nerd out like crazy for like 45 minutes or an hour. So
Right.
if we're going to be nerding out anyway, we might as well record it for the world to see,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's what we thought. And we ended up speaking more than 1 hour. And we're basically going to repeat the same conversation for most of the parts because it was
Hmm.
really lovely and I really enjoyed what we talked over there. Yep. So I think
Same.
we'll be, just getting straight into it. But just for some of the people who do not know Brian Day, it's very rare, but he is a Japanese English interpreter, professional interpreter, who graduated from the same interpreting school as I did. It's called Simon Academy, right?
Yes,
All
Simul
right.
Academy.
All right. How was the experience?
At Simul Academy?
Yeah.
Oh man, I will never forget it. I'll tell you that much. I was very confident in my Japanese ability before I went to Simul Academy, and
Okay.
within about a week and a half of starting at Simul Academy, all
Yeah.
that confidence went out the window.
That's what I
Which
had
was a
experienced too.
very. Oh, really? You had the
Yeah.
same thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same kind of experience. And many of the other classmates were also very proficient in both languages.
Hmm.
And it was very hard for me to stand out in the class.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was really glad that I could graduate, but some other students didn't make it to the end. So,
Yeah.
right, it
Yeah.
wasn't it. It was kind of a struggle, but the
Mm.
graduation meant a lot, and it also part of me is made up of that graduation like experience. So, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, Japanese interpreting schools, I think, are kind of very infamously strict on the
uh-huh.
standards they place on their students for, and so I'm very, very glad to have been able to graduate. But it's a very good experience, right? It kind
Yeah,
of toughens you up for the big wide world out there.
yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of in Japanese we say toryumon. It's like something you have to go through. Like it's like a tunnel that you have to go through, and then
Hmm.
you can
Hmm.
be a professional interpreter even without going to interpreting schools. That is
Oh yeah.
technically feasible, possible,
Hmm.
but it's better you go through that process as well. Yeah,
It gives you a lot of unique insights and experience and knowledge, I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, and of course the networking as well for the future perspective.
very true.
All right. And you are not only an interpreter, you are a YouTuber. I once saw your YouTube videos playing games. I don't know if I should mention this to you, but you really enjoyed it and you got a lot of plays, right?
Back in the day, yeah. I started a YouTube channel, a
Yeah.
gaming YouTube channel where I did
Right.
what's called Let's Plays, which is just playing through a video game and
Yeah.
commentating over it. Back when I was 13 and I'm 29 now,
Oh,
so it's been over a
okay.
decade and a half.
Wow.
But at the time, I was actually doing pretty good. I think I got like 40, 50, 60,000 subscribers, something like that. I got a
Yeah.
couple videos with a decent amount of views.
Right.
And then I went to college and the YouTube thing kind of didn't really carry on from there. Lots of
Ah, okay.
Nintendo, lots of Sonic though.
Yeah.
Everybody listening, please just be rest assured that I am an absolute nerd. As much of a nerd as this conversation is going to make me sound like.
Yeah, actually, I was looking at the number of plays and views of those videos that you made, and it was way more than my views in my YouTube channel. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I could understand that. Wow, everybody loves playing the video games, but not everybody loves interpreting. So that's why.
Yeah. I feel like interpreting is maybe a little more niche.
Yeah, yeah. Not everybody enjoys doing that. That's why maybe my videos don't play as much as yours do.
I might have the advantage there, yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's great. So you're a gamer YouTuber as well, and I was surprised that you're still 29. Wow, that's wonderful.
Oh, yes,
I
I'm
didn't know about
I'm
your age.
29. Oh, oops.
It's okay.
Darn, I shouldn't have said it. Yeah, I am 29. I came to Japan when I was 20, when I had just turned 22.
Okay, right after
So,
college.
yeah, right after college.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I've spent almost my entire 20s in Japan now, and it's kind of
That's cool.
crazy to think back.
Right. And you are now back to Japan, back from the US to Japan, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I guess maybe I should just touch briefly on my relationship with Japanese and Japan.
Sure. Including the question of how did you learn the Japanese language?
Yeah, for sure, for
Hmm.
sure. So I grew up in a really tiny rural town in the
Okay.
United States, in Washington State.
Yep.
It's like a kilometer and a half by a kilometer and a half, with a population of about 1,000 people, and then
Okay.
no other towns for like an hour by car.
Wow.
It's all wheat, right? And I was kind of, I love my hometown, but I was also kind of conscious of the fact that I hadn't really seen a lot of the world growing up.
Mm.
But there were a lot of Mexican and Mexican American students at
Hmm.
the high school that I went to
Yep.
because they would come in from the neighboring town.
Hmm.
And so I would hear a lot of Spanish being
Right.
spoken intermixed with English in the
Okay.
hallways. And I just thought it was so cool that people had like this bilingual background, and
Yeah.
like they were kind of involved in multiple cultures. I always just
Yeah.
thought it was really cool. So
Yeah.
um then, when I went to university, I had to take a foreign language class in order to
Okay.
graduate. And I thought, you know what? I've been playing Super Mario since I was 3 years old.
Yep.
Super Mario's Nintendo, that's Japanese. Samurai are cool. Let's
Yeah.
try Japanese. And
Okay.
I tried it out. It wasn't my major,
Mm.
but I studied for, I think, 2 years of like the bare minimum of classes there. Thought it was really fun. And then I thought, hey, I'm a country bumpkin. I get out and see the world. Decided to study abroad just for 2 months, the summer of my sophomore year. And I
Mm.
went to Hakodate in
Okay.
Hokkaido
Hmm.
for 2 months. It was like a language homestay.
Hmm.
Super fun. The absolute
Wow.
wonderful people I met, and the hospitality, and all the friends I made, and all the memories I made, and the delicious foods, like ikameshi that I ate.
Okay.
It was really, really wonderful, and everybody kind of opened up this part of me that I wasn't aware was there. So I decided, originally I was gonna go to medical school after my undergraduate,
Okay.
but I decided I would do a gap year in Japan
Mm.
after I graduated
Mm.
as an English teacher, and kind of give back this wonderful experience of
Mm.
learning about a new place
Mm.
that Japan had given to me. So then I came to Japan, and I was in Yamagata at the
Mm.
time,
Mm.
surrounded by zero English speakers. Um, everybody spoke Japanese, and
Welcome to
everybody
Japan.
above, yeah, of course. And everybody above like 60 spoke Yamagata Ben, right? So it
Okay.
was quite,
It's a different language, maybe.
it was a different language, yeah. But I found myself really liking getting into the language. So even maybe after I came back from my study abroad, through my first year in Japan, I would just sit and I would watch YouTube videos, and I
Mm.
would read Japanese books, and I would immerse myself in Japanese content. And I think that's really how I ended up learning the language.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, when I heard about your story, especially I was impressed about watching a lot of YouTube videos. Of course, that was in Japanese language, I assume. And then
Yeah.
you watched, immersed yourself, and read a lot of Japanese books as well. I think that also brings me back to my childhood years. I mean, like in my university years when I was reading a
Mm.
lot of English books, as well as
Oh.
Japanese books. And I was really having this hungry kind of spirit of really wanting to learn this English language as well. And
Mm.
then, but at the same time, I was thinking about different dimensions of languages. For example, yes, English has speaking, listening, writing and reading.
Hmm.
But okay, out of the four, I wanted to do speaking. So I
Hmm.
started to speak more of that. And in my university days, I tried to speak in English with the Japanese school.
Okay.
Right.
You're with like your classmates, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. It
Okay.
was the University of Foreign Studies. So people were supposed to learn foreign languages,
Right.
including English. They
Hmm.
had Department of Russian, Spanish, and Chinese, something like that. But
Wow.
then I really thought this 4 years in the university was so crucial in developing the foreign language proficiency that I decided
Hmm.
to make my official language in the university English.
Oh, okay. So that's like your baseline, your default.
I made it default, yes.
Wow.
But that was not the 4 years straight, but from the third year maybe, when I had
Okay.
more time to spend on my
Hmm.
own.
Hmm.
And I started to speak to some of my friends in English. They
Okay.
turned away thinking like I'm crazy guy speaking in English in Japan.
In Japan, to other Japanese people who just
Exactly.
are chill university students. Okay.
Exactly. They just wanted to take it really easy. They just wanted to speak in Japanese without speaking a word in English language. But I really didn't want to do that because I was also paying the tuition fee for the university as well. So I wanted
Yeah.
to really maximize the time spent here. So
Right.
that's why I really started doing this English only kind of space making, place making for me. It worked out really well, and this made the kind of cornerstone or foundation of my English speaking ability that I have now. Yeah.
Really? Okay. So you did find a group of people who wanted to be in like a mostly or all English space with you.
Yeah, exactly. And I still have just one friend of mine very close to me that I speak in English with even today. It's been almost
Wow.
like 15 or 16 years after I graduated from the university. But whenever we meet again in the university, we still speak in English. And when my wife joins, I have to translate for her. We are all Japanese, but we have to do interpretation. That's really funny, right?
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
so
It's
that's
so crazy.
so nerdy. That's so unnecessary. Like
And
there's
that's not
no
necessarily
reason to need a
nerdy.
translator there.
Exactly. So that's the language craze I have.
That's really cool. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I think people like ourselves and also interpreters in general,
Yeah.
we get bit with a language bug where we
Yeah.
get kind of obsessed with like
Yeah.
really wanting to get better at this language. And I
Exactly.
can talk about mine in a minute, but do you have any idea why that you might have got bitten by that bug?
I think
What might have
that's the
caused that?
sound aspect of the language. I really like the sound of English.
The sound. Okay.
Yeah, when they're speaking in English, the sound or the vowels and consonants that we don't really have in Japanese language
Mm, mm.
are really cool, in my opinion. When I first listened to English when I was 13 years old, I think, and then I
Okay.
really, aspired to speak like that. And not only being able to listen in English, so maybe that sound aspect that really drew me into to this language. And but
Interesting.
yeah, but when I tried other languages, including Spanish,
Hmm.
Chinese, and Germany,
Hmm.
German, they didn't really sound like those English languages. So I wasn't too much attracted to those languages. So that's why, although did try to study those three languages, it didn't really continue. So that's why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I guess maybe the sound wavelengths or the vibrations of English kind
Yeah.
of vibe with your brain well or something.
Yeah, it's
I
more
don't
like
know.
yeah, it's like a wavelength or the wave itself of the sound of English that really caught me back when I was 13. And I really wanted to understand and wanted to have a teacher who could elucidate that to me. Like, hey, this is how you speak TH sound. This is how you speak,
Mm,
how you
mm,
pronounce
mm.
V sound as
Right.
opposed to B sound. And there
Right.
was one professor at the university that did so that he actually asked us, "Hey, if you have one English word that you cannot pronounce well, write it down on the blackboard."
Mm.
I mean, at that time we were still
Hmm.
using Blackboard, and then we wrote down, including the words like vocabulary, and
Mm.
we tried them out with the professor speaking like vocabulary, like really, really slow. But then that really helped me because that was something that no other teacher did for us, right? So it was
Yeah.
really a nice lecture and class for me back when I was
Okay.
17.
So you'd always been interested in the sounds of English,
I think
but
so.
that was the first time that someone explicitly taught you about them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Because
really interesting.
yeah, in my family, nobody went to university, so they were up to the high school, and I was the
Mm,
first one to go to the university. So nobody really knew English. So I had to really go
right.
to the professor, and he really fortunately told us how to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like you met a really cool teacher there. Very
Yeah,
nice.
I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, regarding, oh yeah,
While we're still on this point of learning
sure.
languages, this is something that might be helpful for Japanese learners of English as well.
Yeah.
So in the West, it was long considered and is still considered that Japanese is like very nearly impossible to learn to
Okay.
fluency, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons my language bug bit me is because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, people are saying it's impossible to speak Japanese at a near native level.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna prove them wrong. The linguistic aspect of the language I like is actually written Japanese. I
Okay.
really like written Japanese and the
Okay.
characters and everything, really
Mm.
cool, and also just speaking with people. But
Yeah.
that idea of I'm going to forge my own path and learn this language to a level of proficiency that will um, disprove this
Mm.
uh, image around Japanese, I think is kind of one thing that drove me.
Mm.
And when I started really getting into learning Japanese,
Yeah.
the one really kind of crazy method of learning it that was barely gaining popularity at the time was called AJATT, all Japanese all the time.
Okay.
And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's basically the its core principle, I guess, was the reason Westerners are unable to learn Japanese is
Mm.
because they just aren't putting enough time into it. So it was a very like seishinlong type of
Mm-hmm.
thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically if you have a hobby, now you do that hobby in Japanese. So
Correct.
if you like reading comics, now you read those comics in Japanese. And if you don't know a word, you figure it out. You don't use a textbook. You don't use a glossary. You just, if you have a word in the thing you're trying to enjoy, you learn the word so that you can enjoy the thing. And that's basically what I did. I would open up YouTube and I would, like I said, I'm a gamer, I'm a nerd. So I said, I want to watch a Minecraft video today. And I would look for Minecraft instead of Minecraft,
Yeah.
right? And whoever came up, usually Hikaking,
Mm-hmm.
would be my content for that day.
Yeah.
And then when you read a book, I didn't reach for like a kid's book or this book or that book. I would reach for a normal novel off the shelf at a Japanese bookstore. And when I started reading, it took me 20, 30, 40 minutes to read
Mm.
one single page.
Yeah.
And I would have to use the scanner on the Google Translate app to scan any kanji that I didn't know,
Okay. Yeah.
and then copy paste that into a flashcard app and basically just do that
Wow.
forever. But then it gets faster and faster and faster over time. So,
Yeah.
and there was a point. I would not recommend this. There was a point where I would leave the NHK news podcast on overnight while I was asleep.
Okay.
Yeah, bad idea, but it's just it was that level of motivation to
Yeah.
like prove people wrong, and also to prove myself, and also the belief that it really is just a matter of volume, which I do kind of still believe.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually agree with that idea, to be honest. Like, first of all, like these conference interpreters, especially, are really crazy about languages itself.
Yeah,
Of course, we love to talk about business, we love to talk about culture or art, whatever it is. But
yeah,
above all, a lot of us really like to think about language, think about how to produce language better, more efficiently, and more
hmm
effectively. So that's why maybe when you were younger, you had spent 40 minutes to read one page of full of kanjis. Then I think that's a passion into the language itself to really understand what's going on there. And
hmm
and recently, it's kind of becoming more difficult to have that kind of environment because you have everything with AI. AI can
mm
translate for you. AI can
mm
summarize for you. You don't have to spend 40 minutes to read one page. So the
Mm,
passion is something really difficult to have right now because AI
mm,
takes the passion away from you. And that's a harder time for younger students right now if you're going to the foreign language universities like this.
I see.
What do you think
Yeah.
about that, right?
That's really interesting. Usually when people talk about AI and languages, they talk
Mm,
about the economic aspect of it.
yeah,
Like, oh, soon people are going to be able to use AI
yeah,
to conduct business meetings or to go on a trip somewhere.
yeah.
But that's really interesting. You're suggesting that AI might lower the motivation of a person to learn languages because it's just right there, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and I really I would understand that if I were someone thinking about or even attempting to learn a language right now. I would suggest that people attempting to learn languages would put down the AI because kind of trying to
Yeah.
decode a page or what someone is saying is what's going to be is the thing that's going to put those language circuits in place in your brain.
Mm,
And for someone who's considering not learning a language because AI is right there, if you're only in it for the economic benefit of
yeah.
learning a language, then maybe, sure, that's the right choice. But being able to, it's like unlocking a character in a video game, right?
Okay.
Being able to now speak and have very human conversations and connections with an entire group of people
Yeah.
that you never would have before, and all of the beautiful art and music and content that they produce will help you unlock, I think, a part of yourself.
Mm,
So even in a world of AI, the language just feels different when you're immersed in it yourself.
yeah. Yeah.
So I
And
think
it's
it's still worth it.
yeah, it's still worth it, and I think it will be even more worth it in the age of AI. The passion of learning a foreign language, or it will be perceived as more difficult thing to do. But in the past, everyone was learning English or a foreign language as if it
Mm-hmm.
is the obligation. But now it's not going
Mm,
to be an obligation. It's something luxury or luxurious thing to
I
do
see.
a foreign language learning in the future, maybe. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
learning a foreign language by yourself, people will say, well, wow, you are learning a foreign language? We stopped taking English classes in the universities. Wow, but you are still taking this optional English course. Wow, that's amazing. People might say that in the
Mm-hmm.
age of
Mm-hmm.
AI. That also means that, as I said before, it's very difficult to have the passion, or it's very difficult to have the environment. You said all Japanese at all times, right?
All Japanese all the time.
All
Yes.
the time, yes. AJATT. In my case, I
Mm-hmm.
did AEATT. So that's what I did. But making that environment in 2026 may be way more difficult than it was back in the 2000s when I was a university student. So for language craze or language crazy people, I think it might be even more difficult to get that environment. But for some people, they may not. I just don't know. But what's your take on that?
By that, do you mean it's difficult? Do you
Yeah.
think that it's difficult to put yourself in that environment now, or do you think it's there's just going to be less people interested in
Mm.
going that far to push themselves to learn a language?
Right. My point was that it would be more difficult for anyone to make that environment to learn a foreign language because they can always go to the easier way. I want to learn
Mm.
how to do
Mm. Okay.
interpretation or language learning, but then here is AI that can do all the translation. I don't have to speak a English word
Mm-hmm.
because they can translate instantly. So that
Mm-hmm.
takes away your motivation as well. That's why,
It's like a temptation, right?
yeah, I would say
So
temptation.
if you
Exactly.
find like a difficult phrase or sentence or paragraph or something, rather than working through it yourself, you'll
Yep.
just throw it into AI, it'll spit the answer out, and the effect of what you've just done is lower than it would have been had you gone through it yourself. Is that am I understanding you correctly?
Correct. That's your
Okay.
yeah, your understanding is
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Okay. I understand the temptation bit,
Hmm.
and I think that will tempt a lot of people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there's a lot of existing temptations that are very
Okay.
similar to that. So
Mhm.
you'll see in a lot of Japanese learners of English, and I guess also Western learners of Japanese,
Mhm.
people will spend a lot of time looking for the perfect textbook or the
Mhm.
perfect glossary because getting through a novel by yourself with maybe basic conversational level of Japanese is very hard. Like I said,
Mhm.
40 to 60 minutes for a single page
Yeah.
of like very simple content. People don't want to do that and it doesn't feel effective, especially not immediately.
Mhm.
So you go, okay, I need content that's more specifically tailored to my level and that's more pedagogical in nature. And then you spend 10 hours looking for a textbook and then it gets here a week later and then you finally start. And then, so I think there's similar temptations
Mhm.
that kind of feel more learny, that are not necessarily effective. And so I think in that way, that's similar to just turning to Chat GPT for everything. It's
Mhm.
not as easy, as readily available, but I think it's similar. So I think that is more of a question of what is that learner's goal? So in my case, and in your case, I was like, I am going to learn Japanese to gosh darn near perfection. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. Okay, what's necessary for that? I'm going to have to be able to read and listen to anything and
Yeah.
understand all of it, step one. So then I just went and did that. And I think if you keep that goal clear in your mind, then the tools to accomplish it kind of fall into place. And
Right.
I do think that AI can be used really effectively to help facilitate a learning language learning journey as well.
Mm.
But
Yeah. Yeah, in that sense, I'm also using AI to have English conversations back with myself. For example, I use Gemini to have because I use the sound recognition technique, so I don't have to type in every
mm,
time, and then they can spit out the answers, and I can just push for the read out the answers. So it's like
mm.
they're speaking to me, and I'll answer back in English. So in this way, I
Mm.
can also practice English conversation. So having an AI is like a partner for English speaking practice. So in that sense, yeah, that's a very good
Right.
one. Yeah. But in case of translation, I would just want to say this in English.
Mm.
So just translate everything and then you just
Yeah.
say it as they spit it
Yeah.
out. Then that may not be good. And sometimes you see people watching their smartphones when they make a speech in front of 100 people in public. That doesn't really make them look really good, right? They're watching smartphones to make a speech. So that's the dependence on AI, which
Okay.
I was kind of referring to as the negative
Okay.
consequence. But if you use it
Okay.
really wisely, so yeah, coming back to your point about having the right goal,
Mm.
in my case, graduating while paying my tuition fee was the goal, and I wanted
Mm.
to because I was paying money. Just wanted to maximize the economical effect of doing so. So maybe
Yeah.
that's why. Yeah, that's where my motivation came from. Yeah, but right now in 2026, it might be even harder for them to find that motivation because a lot of things can be done by AI. But in our past, we
Yeah.
had to do it ourselves. We still were using paper dictionaries at that time. So maybe time has changed, but yeah, that's why sometimes passion is something more difficult to have for some people, not all the people.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's definitely true.
right.
Because it does lower the relative economic benefit and
Hmm.
like kind of practical benefit of knowing a language to that extent,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that's just an unavoidable fact because it's a
hmm,
very convenient tool. So,
yeah, it
and
is.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we just have to try to distinguish whether it's economic benefit or emotional benefit, or what kind of benefit it would be. So if we can be clear on that, I think we can try to use the AI more effectively, right? More efficiently as well.
Yeah.
All right. Coming back or going to a different question now. We already talked about the hardcore topic of AI replacing interpreting kind of thing. But if you remember any interesting episode of yourself doing interpretation in your career, if you can share with us one of those.
Right. So I guess I'll start by talking about how I became an interpreter in the
Oh, yeah.
first
Sorry. I
place
forgot
because
about
this
that. Yep.
no, no worries. This continues to be my favorite, well, one of my favorite gigs I've ever done as an interpreter in my
Okay.
entire life.
Hmm.
So let's back up in my timeline. I just told you that after I graduated college, I was planning on going to Japan for a gap year as an English
Yeah.
teacher, right? Um, we in the United States graduate college in like June or something like that.
Hmm.
And then um, the next academic year usually begins from around like September or something like that, right? So even for people who just graduated college, you usually have like maybe kind of sort of a summer break in
Yeah.
between of at least like a month or two. And during that summer break, right before I was already scheduled to go to Japan, I was just sitting around my house and I got a call on the phone. I go, "Hey, what's up?" He says, "Hey, this is Dave." I go, "Who the heck is Dave?"
Dave. Okay.
And Dave was the friend of a friend of a friend who owned an interpretation agency
Okay.
in the town next to mine. Now, remember, I said I lived in a very rural area.
Yep.
The only language that his agency did interpreting for usually was Spanish and English,
Mm.
right? Um, but on this particular day, a Japanese gentleman had been cycling through the town on his annual cycling trip across the United States, and he'd fallen and injured himself.
Mm.
And he'd been hospitalized at the local, very rural hospital.
Mm.
And he didn't speak a lick of English, nor did anybody with him.
Okay.
And so they were looking for a Japanese to English interpreter in the area. Nobody in the area spoke both of those languages except
Okay.
me. And at the time, I only spoke like kind of conversational Japanese. Like
Yep.
I could have fun at like nomikai,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? I was definitely not professional interpreter levels. So Dave says to me, "Hey, Brian, would you like to interpret for this guy? He's really in a pinch." And I said, "I don't know if I could I don't know if I could do that morally." He said, "I'll pay you $60 an hour." I said, "I'll be there tomorrow, Dave."
That's what we do.
um, yeah, it's life. Talk about economic benefit.
Yeah. Exactly.
I went in and I helped this gentleman through physical therapy, occupational therapy,
Mm.
language therapy,
Okay.
and also visits with different physicians because he had bumped his head when he'd fallen. And I was basically his lifeline throughout that experience.
Right.
His wife ended up flying out from Japan, but she needed to know where to go. They needed to be able to communicate with their insurance companies. They were both very scared, of course, because he's hospitalized in a foreign country, doesn't
Yeah.
speak the language, can't really communicate with the nurses. So every time I came in, the look of like relief that washed over his face and like how happy he was to see me. And then the most gratifying part of it all was at the very end when they finally got everything sorted with their insurance and they got their bus and their flight back to Japan booked. They were like jumping with joy of like, "Oh, we can finally go home. We made it through this. We have everything in order. Thank you so much for playing that role for us." And it was just one of the most gratifying experiences of my entire life. And I said, "Wow, I am just a language nerd. I like reading books and listening to the NHK News podcast for ridiculous amounts of hours." But it was just so gratifying. And to me, that's one thing that an interpreter is. Depending on the situation, you can be a lifeline for a person. You can be their source of psychological safety. And to me, that was what I did in that moment. I really bridged a gap that to him must have felt like a ravine. And it was an absolute honor. And I feel like I'm still kind of chasing that feeling as an interpreter to this day. I know we play a lot of other roles, and those are important. We can get to those in a minute, but that's probably my biggest, like, "Hey, this was really cool" type of moment.
Yeah, I think that role as an interpreter to really protect and save people and their, in a sense, basic human rights, in a sense, is the critical and maybe the core part of the interpreter's role, I think. Rather than just using language, it's more
Mm,
about really helping them communicate. And I also
mm,
remember the first time I was interpreting at Peaceboat, that's, I think, NGO, that's giving us a lot of global voyages. And we were in that global cruise and as an interpreter. And
mm,
every country we went, we did interpretation, and they say thank you, and they say almost uniformly, "Hey, without you, we would have um,
mm,
troubles, right? So without you, we
mm,
would have troubles. Without you, so with you, things were so much different." And for me, that was the moment. I think it was back in 2011. Right after graduation, that I
mm,
started to find out, okay, this is how I should use my languages. There are
mm.
many ways to use languages, whether you're coding a dictionary, whether you're
Right.
writing a book, whether you're writing, yeah, whatever it is. But for me, speaking
Mm,
was my calling, and interpreting to really help other people was the calling for me. So that's how I also found out what I should be doing in my life. I think that's the same for you, like really helping people out with the language that you have. Although you may not have been 100%, skilled at the time, but that
oh,
was the
no.
kind of, original moment or gentaiken, kind of a really important
Mm,
cornerstone experience that destined you, like, yes, this is what I have to do in my life,
mhm.
and that's what I have as well. Yeah, so that's why I resonate with what you're saying.
That was your impetus for continuing down the path as an interpreter then? The gratitude that you felt from those people when you were doing Peace Boat?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in a sense,
It's
it's similar.
yeah, I think we had pretty much the same experience in two different places.
Yeah,
Um Because, like I said, people who get bit by the language bug, I know so many Japanese people whose favorite subject in school was English, but
yeah.
that's all it remains for their entire life is
Mm.
their favorite subject in school. It's that moment, and I think in a way you and I were very lucky when the
Right.
thing that you really like and the fact that that can be applied in a way that really helps people, we got to experience a moment where both of those things aligned. I think that's a really rare thing, and I'm so grateful for it. And yeah, I think your question was kind of getting at, hey, let's talk about episodes that show what interpreting is to you. And I think that's
Yeah.
a good question, but I think interpreting is a bunch of different things that we kind of all call the same thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult to explain this, but in that moment, for him, I think it was very important that I was a human interpreter. I think it was very important that he had another human in the room with him who was on his side, advocating for him
Yeah.
in his language, but also who he could trust with the other language and the other culture. I think that was absolutely critical just for his peace of mind in a very scary situation. At the same time, we do other things too, right? Sometimes we're called upon to be like real technical experts. Like if you're going into a super pharmaceutical or a very
Yeah.
technical technology gig or something like that, you need both sides of that conversation to trust you to understand what they're saying, or else they're not going to be able to speak freely. They're going to be worried about, is this actually getting through okay? So there's times when the like specific terminology
Mm.
and the words themselves are more important. And then there's times we act as like as like a mediator. And I think the most famous example of this is like that Zelensky Trump Vance
Mm-hmm.
famous conversation that happened on news where President Zelensky was speaking in English, but the conversation kind of got a little bit
Yeah.
it out of hand, right? And I, looking at that, said, wow, if there were an interpreter here, the pace would have dropped a little bit. And
Correct.
his English is good, don't get me wrong, but he still had the added cognitive load of having to think about English expressions while also performing one of the most diplomatic conversations in
Yeah.
like his entire life. So had there been an interpreter there, that probably would have been a very different conversation. It would have been slower. It might not have gotten so out of hand. So there's times where we can kind of control the traffic in a conversation as well. And I feel myself doing that sometimes, and it depends on the context, and it also depends on like where you are in that particular conversation. Yeah, so I think we have a lot of roles. What
Yeah.
role and story that represents it would you like to tell me about,
No, I,
Onishi-san?
I think you said it all. Brian, like in the technical meetings, yes, they already know those technical terms. So they share those technical terms. And sometimes if we say it a little wrong, then
Mm.
they will tell us like, no, that's not the technical term that we're
Yeah,
using. Blah, blah, blah.
yeah, yeah.
So rather than being a mediator, we just have to be really precise for that
Mm.
occasion. And
Hmm.
on the other hand, interpreters are there to give them the peace of mind, as you have said. And also, we're working as a mediator in a sense. In the case of a diplomatic situation, maybe I've
Hmm.
never done diplomatic interpreting in the past yet, but I think
Hmm.
just having an interpreter or just saying the word interpreting itself is too abstract, I have to say. We just have to
Mm.
think about different types of roles we play at the
Yeah.
different days. So I
Hmm.
just, for example, I say, I'm going to Osaka today for an interpretation at a company, but that doesn't tell
Right.
me a lot. I have to be
Mm.
really be specific. Okay, this is the industry. Hey, these are the clients. These are the people that are listening. They
Hmm.
may know a little bit of English, so you might want to translate in such a way that they can understand well, or
Hmm.
so all the type of that the clients have different uh, situations, so we have
Hmm.
to also
Hmm.
look at those client situations as well. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So my point is just saying interpreting means we do have a lot of situations we have to consider. That really makes it really interesting to do this.
It's very dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, dynamic. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
word I was trying to find.
Yeah. Sometimes when you get a gig, especially if it's through like an agency,
Mhm.
you will not know the extent of interpreting the people
Yeah.
are going to need from you until you get there and ask them,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And then they'll say, "Oh, I might just need a little bit of language assistance here and there," or they might say, "Hey, I need full language support," or they might say,
right.
"Hey, we thought we were going to have 10 people. We only have one person now, so can you just sit behind this guy and maybe whisper in his ear?" So
Whispering.
it's very dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally dynamic. And then interpreters, in a sense, need to be quite flexible.
Hmm.
Sometimes consecutive interpretation becomes simultaneous and vice
Hmm.
versa.
Hmm.
And then they
Yeah.
will be told on the day of the interpreting, and some people will be really surprised and they get nervous because they
Hmm.
haven't practiced note taking for years sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that may be also a flexibility part of being an interpreter that other people outside the industry may not notice. So
Mm.
that's why we have to, in a sense, advocate or this, share with the world that this is what we're doing. This is why
Hmm.
we're sweating behind the scenes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And my episode about interpreting, by the way, is just last year when we were doing the World Expo in Osaka. And
Oh.
then, yeah, there was a panel discussion session regarding IUU. I'm not sure if you have heard about this. This is illegal and unreported and unregulated fishing. So it's basically
Oh.
illegal fishing that
Okay.
the UN is trying to crack down on. And there was a moment that the speaker from Canada was speaking for about 2 minutes for one chunk. And then that was very hard because I was doing whispering interpretation from Japanese to English because
Okay.
he was the only guest that needed interpretation. But then when he spoke, we had to do consecutive. So I had to kind of
Mm.
be really
Right.
speedy in terms of
Mm.
the interpretation. But then when he's spoken in English, I have to take my pen and start taking notes.
Right.
So I had to be quite flexible between two different modes of interpretation, and that chunk lasted for 2 minutes. And
Wow.
I kept taking notes, taking notes. I think I even flipped a page,
Yeah.
so it went like 2 or 3 pages in the end. But after I translated that really lengthy part, the
Hmm.
people, the audience, actually said praised my interpretation, saying like, "Wow, that interpretation was wonderful." And then the audience started to
Nice.
clap the hands. and that actually was captured on YouTube. So I still sometimes
What?
watch that to kind of encourage my work and motivation.
Bask in the moment.
Bask in
Yeah.
the moment, yeah, immersion,
Relive the glory.
living in the glory. Yes, that's the phrase. So that shows like, hey, maybe the world still needs human interpreters rather than AI interpreters. If AI does that job, maybe nobody is going to clap a hand. But if
Mm,
we do this as human interpreters, because speaking for 2 minutes and interpreting for 2 minutes or more than 2 minutes is considered to be really difficult, and then
mm-hmm.
but a human did it, and then that's why they gave us a praise. So I
Mm,
think
mm.
people or the audience still want to hear that from the humans, not the AI. That was the
I
kind of,
see.
yeah, typical episode, not a typical, but the really telling episode that I wanted to share.
That's wonderful. And there are moments like that, right?
Mm.
When you know that you really nailed an
Nailed it,
interpretation and
yeah.
you can see the faces or like the nodding of the audience or something and you're like,
Exactly.
"Yes, I did it." And you
Exactly.
just feel in that moment like, "Okay, this is what I'm here for."
Right.
That's a really interesting way to frame it though, because
Mm.
I think you're right. When people see people doing that,
Yeah.
they are impressed by it,
Mm.
they appreciate it in the same way kind of that they would appreciate maybe a work of art, right? Wow, someone made this painting, another human being made this beautiful painting with all
Yeah.
this sentiment and like this detail in it.
Right.
That might be something similar
Yeah,
to how
similarity is
an
there.
audience evaluates your interpreting
Mm,
performance.
mm.
And also it just feels more human,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
When you want to get a human message across, you don't act like an HR department
Mm.
and send a company wide email with 2 or 3 lines on it. That's the most efficient way to do it. But if you want to actually have someone feel something, you go there in person and you sit down and say, "Hey, I understand what you're saying." That's what you did. You said to that English speaking guy, "I understand what you're saying. Let me interpret it."
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
there, that human dynamic is better preserved. So it's art and it's warmth, it sounds like.
Yeah,
That's
art
very
and
true.
warmth. Yeah, I really like
Yeah,
that phrasing. And of course, we had to cover the technical terms for that panel discussion. So
of
you can't
course.
really be all the time emotional, like, and then nobody is
Mm,
going to get that. So you have to
yeah.
go through the technical term and the preparation and pre-study about the panel discussion as well. But then only after that preparation and only after going through all the nervousness of
Mm,
standing behind
hmm.
the speaker and standing in front of the 100 plus people, then you see the art of interpreting coming out. And that's why,
Yeah.
yeah, as you said, that's why I'm here, kind of phenomenon. And I was thinking, honestly, like that I could die. Maybe I can die
I'm
if
done. I beat the game. That's it.
yeah, I beat the game. That's it. So I could die on that day. I would be
Mm,
happier. My wife wouldn't be happier, but that could have happened. So that's why yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know how to find this word, but euphoria or the feeling of really happiness, extreme contentness, extreme
hmm.
satisfaction
Hmm.
internally, and that comes with the job. And I am paid for that job. That gave
Hmm.
me extreme
Hmm.
happiness.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the mechanism of really making me be attracted to the world of interpreting,
Mm,
as I
hmm.
also said in
Hmm.
the TEDx talk back in 2019. But yeah, that
Yeah.
that's why. Yeah, and I think I do resonate with what you're saying, and I hope that you are also resonating with what I'm saying as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Whenever whenever I interpret, I think it's sometimes easier to feel what you felt in that moment in consecutive rather than simultaneous interpretation because you
Hmm.
have a little more spotlight on
Yeah.
you. Um, but even when I'm doing consecutive and even when I'm in the booth,
Mm.
what I do is I make a point to watch the audience's faces
Yeah.
while I'm speaking, because their reaction, even if they don't say anything at all, tells you everything. If you see
Exactly.
deep nods in the audience, or you see people going back like "whoa" or something like that, you know that you have touched them in a way. You know that what you're saying is either conveying and being understood really well, or it's making an impact or something like that. So, and it does make an impact. Sometimes it's the words themselves that we choose. Sometimes it's the way that we deliver them. But it's both a stream of information and a stream of kind of emotion and
Emotion.
social signals that we deliver at the exact same time. And I used the word dynamic earlier. We constantly, every single second in an interpretation, are making decisions about, okay, how much do I dial into conveying accurate information versus how much do I dial into kind of channeling this person's emotional message, right? And that's a very dynamic thing. And that, at least at this moment in time, requires stage presence. It requires communication skills, I'm saying to the TEDx speaker. And it requires an element of like understanding what humans want to say and what they want to hear in a way that isn't just the words themselves. And for the moment, at least, that's quite a human thing, I think.
Yeah, it's totally a human thing. It's a whole people experience. And I also do the same when I'm doing interpretation from the booth. And sometimes it's very hard because the materials, the presentations are 100 plus pages. So it's,
Yeah.
I have to look at the pages basically. But when I have some free time to have the luxury of looking at those people's
Mm.
faces, yeah, as you said, reaction is everything. And when they
Hmm.
nod, when they think like, "Wow, that's the interpretation I need to listen to," then
Yeah.
that makes my day.
Hmm.
So, and in order to make that happen, I think more than just the language itself. Yes, as you said, the communication, emotion is very important, and some people forget the importance of intonation as well. They
Mm.
just some Japanese interpreters just go flat with their
Mm.
intonation. But I
Yeah.
say in my private lessons, just make your intonation work so that you can
Hmm.
make your intonation make sense.
Right.
Because that's how you make your job really communicative and really I know, sorry, make values for what you were doing as an interpreter. So they are too much sometimes
Oh, yeah.
preoccupied with the technical details. Like I
Hmm.
have to say A, B, C, D, E. But then
Hmm.
after saying that, make sure you have the emotion and intonation also conveyed throughout as well. I think that's the whole people experience and the whole communicative experience, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are times and there are certain classes of meetings where the majority of what's important is the I need to say A, B, C, D. Like
Yeah.
if you're doing like a, I don't know, compliance training
Yep.
video voiceover or something like
You
that,
have to be
or
compliant. Yes.
something extremely only technical, then yeah.
You
It's
have to be
fine to
technical as
focus
well.
mostly on the technical and the accuracy aspect. That's
Right.
fine.
Right.
Um, and there's also this philosophy, and there's probably differing opinions here about the interpreter should be like more of a fly on the wall and shouldn't really add their own emotional aspect to it,
Mm.
which I completely understand. At the same time, I don't know if an interpreter should subtract the emotional aspect from what the
Mm.
original speaker is saying. So I think
Mm.
it's an ability to read the speaker
Yep.
and then an ability to read the room to judge whether it's appropriate for
Yeah.
you to add that emotional or preserve that emotional tone yourself, and then make a decision based on that. So, like I said, it's not just like a hey, do I use a more engaging intonation or not? It's a very dynamic
Right.
decision making process. But
Right.
I completely agree.
Mm.
Feeling like there's a human there, whether they're in front of you in consecutive
Yep.
or behind you in the booth, that cares about what's being said,
Yeah.
I think is huge.
Yep. I think coming back to the original root of the meaning of the word interpretation itself, because interpretation itself is to understand something, right? To
Mm,
construe
mm.
something.
Yeah.
For example, interpretation of Japanese Constitution, Article 9. I'm not
Mm,
going to
right.
get into that
Right.
discussion, but
That's a
we are
different podcast.
interpreting, right? We are understand, trying to get a sense or get a meaning out of the text. It's the
Right.
same with the
Right.
interpretation as well
Right.
because humans are doing interpretation, we have emotions in it.
Mm, mm.
We understand the text or the speech in a certain way with
Mm-hmm.
emotions. So emotions will not go away from interpretation, I have to say. But then,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but the emotions should be accurate or emotion should be consistent. Emotion should be, in a sense, logically
Mm,
understood
mm,
from the
mm,
way
mm.
that they speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be like when they're speaking with a sad face, we shouldn't be laughing. When they're laughing, we
Right.
shouldn't be crying. So of course,
Right.
that's the
Put
emotional,
simply, yes.
exactly, put simply, emotional consistency, I would say. But
Hmm.
then, if you can fairly infer and interpret from those emotions that you can also interpret with that certain emotion or intonation, you should be doing so.
Yeah.
That's what I think is still the range or the scope of interpreting. Yep.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
some interpreters, yeah, may shy away from doing this, and I
Hmm.
would recommend or I would suggest that they do that as well if they can.
I am in the exact same camp as you,
Mm,
and it is probably one of the number one things I get complimented on in my
mm,
performance as an interpreter. People will come up to me afterward and they're like, "Hey, I loved the way you conveyed
yeah,
his emotion and his passion for the subject. It
yeah,
almost sounded like you were giving the speech when I
yeah,
was listening to your interpretation. It was very engaging, right? Which
exactly.
is important because that original presenter's presentation deserves to be engaging. They worked very hard to make it engaging. So hopefully it's engaging for their listeners. So it seems, yeah, obviously context dependent, but it seems like obvious in my mind. And hey, I am
Yeah.
glad we're on the same page about that.
We're 100% the same page. We could have discussed even one another hour to talk about this, but I
Yeah.
think we've been talking for almost like 1 hour now. But some of the other friends of mine also asked some questions. But the maybe I would just go with the one last question if that's okay
Hmm.
with you.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe some interesting question. What is your occupational habit? I don't know how to say this in English, but in Japanese we say 職業病. It's like
Hmm.
because you're an interpreter, you end up doing this. You are habituated to do this. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, and I love it and I hate it. I constantly have a simultaneous interpreting line going on in my head, no matter
Exactly.
what I'm doing all day. And like, I can't turn it off. I'm watching the news. My brain in English, I'm watching the news in
Yeah.
English. My brain is interpreting that into Japanese. And then I'll just be sitting there watching with like my friend or something, and all of a sudden I'll pull out my phone and start googling something, and they're like,
Yeah.
what are you googling?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm googling how to say desalination in Japanese
Oh,
or
wow.
something like that." Just as an example,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
like I'll have my Japanese line going in my brain, and then I'll hit a word that I don't know, and I'm like, now I have to know that word. So it's just it's pretty constant.
I think that's what most of the other interpreters are doing as well. But you are
Oh
really
yeah.
crazy in a really good sense. I'm also doing that as well. When I walk around outside and I see something I've never seen before, then I will think like,
Hmm.
hey, what is that in English? What is that in Japanese in the first place? And then
Yeah.
I will also use my phone to check it out, search it on the Google. So I think that's kind of occupational. I don't know how to say this. Do you have any good translation of shokugyo bill,
Oh
occupational
God, put
habit?
me on the
That's how I
spot.
put it. Yeah, maybe we can have it as a
Yeah,
homework.
that's oh man, I'm gonna have to Google that one. I'm gonna have to pull out my phone. I
That
I don't know. I would probably phrase it idiomatically. I'd be like, I'm stuck at work. I take
oh, stuck in work
homework
app.
with me or something like
Right,
that.
right, right. So this one also is another example of our shokugyo bill or occupational habit of really
Hmm.
always checking the translation of this. I think
Yeah.
we answered my friend's question by answering it this way. But do you have the final thoughts about this conversation we have had so far for 1 hour now?
I think well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Second of all, I think it's very clear if anybody's made it this far how nerdy we are about
We are.
the job we do and how much we love it.
Yeah.
Third of all, I think we went over a couple topics today. We talked
Mm,
about some kind of formative experiences that indicated what interpreting is for us.
yeah.
We talked a little bit about the human value of interpreting. We didn't totally go over everything AI related in
Mm,
terms of like what we think the outlook for interpreting is in the future.
correct.
But and then we talked about just like why we love it. But I think any of these topics could merit like a 3 to 4 hour conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
The only thing I wanted to say is there's just some people who really like languages. People in Japan who like learning English or whatever language. And if you're bit by that bug, that is a worthwhile line to go down. It will unlock a new part of you. It will unlock a whole lot of new relationships. And it's worth it to go down that line.
Yep.
And being an interpreter is fun. It's an honor. You get to be part of an active participant in conversations that you never would have dreamed of otherwise across a whole lot of fields. So
Right.
it's a lot of fun. And I look forward to nerding out with you again.
Yeah, let's do it sometime in the future as well. I think we had just talked for 1 hour, but I don't think this is enough. Maybe we can have some questions before we have the second session and talk about those questions as well as our questions as
Sure.
well. Yes, and as you said as well, like this career of being an interpreter is really not the usual ones for a lot of language learners. May not be the usual path, but I also want to say it loud, but the interpreting is fun. Interpreting
Yeah.
is life enriching, and interpreting is my life. That's how I want to put it to really make it simple. But yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Brian Day. I think it was a really, really interesting conversation, and hopefully we can do that again sometime in the future. All right.
It was a pleasure. Let's do it.
Let's
Thank
do
you,
it.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for watching, and we'll hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.